Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today is Sunday, February 15th, 2026. I hope your weekend is treating you well.
And if you're anything like me, you've probably spent a good chunk of that weekend questioning the very nature of your own reality.
Only slightly existential for a Sunday morning, but you're right, we are staring at a mountain of research today. We've got articles from Fightful, deep dives from Awful Announcing, some really fascinating historical analysis from Pro Wrestling Stories, and of course some very, very heated debates from the Dirty Sheets.
And it all centers on one thing.
WWE.
Unreal. Season 2 dropped on Netflix back on January 20th, and I don't think documentary is even the right word for it anymore. It feels more like a cultural intervention.
It's a full-blown phenomenon. For anyone listening who might have, successfully ignored the Netflix algorithm for the last 3 weeks, Unreal is a docuseries. It's produced by Netflix, Omaha Productions, that's Peyton Manning's company, and crucially, NFL Films. And it tracks the behind-the-scenes chaos of world wrestling entertainment. But just calling it a wrestling show feels so reductive, doesn't it?
It completely misses the point. This isn't just about wrestling. Not really. This is about the moment the carnival barker finally looked at the crowd and said, you know what? Come on inside the tent. I'm going to show you exactly how the lady gets sawed in half.
And somehow, by showing us the trick, they've made the magic even more confusing.
That's the maddening part.
Yeah.
You see the strings, but you still can't quite figure out the puppet.
And that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are not just going to recap episodes or, tell you who won which belt.
No.
We need to figure out if this documentary is actually just another layer of the fiction. We have some serious accusations that the behind-the-scenes meetings are staged for the cameras.
A performance of a meeting.
Exactly. We have this really compelling theory that professional wrestling actually invented the modern reality TV genre as we know it.
Oh, absolutely.
And we absolutely have to talk about the sheer mind-boggling audacity of comparing a wrestling script to the U.S. Constitution.
Oh, we're definitely getting to the Constitution. That single quote has been living rent-free in my head for weeks now.
Yeah.
It's just, wow.
But, okay, before we get into the high-level philosophy of it all, let's start with the hook. The promise. The access.
Right, the whole premise of the show.
Season 2 promises us entry into the gorilla position. Now, I know we have listeners who maybe haven't watched a wrestling match since the 90s or maybe ever. So can you paint the picture for us? What are we actually looking at when we see the gorilla position?
Okay, so imagine the anatomy of a live professional wrestling broadcast. The gorilla position is the absolute nerve center. It's the brainstem of the entire operation.
And why is it called that? Gorilla.
It's named after Gorilla Monsoon. He was a legendary wrestler back in the day, a huge guy, and then became this iconic commentator alongside Jesse the Body Ventura. He was the big guy in the tuxedo who always seemed to be in charge backstage.
Oh, okay, Ray, I remember him.
So physically, this position is located literally just behind the giant entrance curtain. You know when you watch a show and the wrestler walks out through the smoke and the fireworks?
Yeah.
Gorilla is right on the other side of that fabric. And it's not glamorous. It's usually a really cramped, dark, chaotic space filled with monitors, tangles of cables, headsets, and just a palpable sense of panic.
It sounds incredibly intense.
It is arguably the most high-pressure environment in all of live television. This is the spot where Vince McMahon sat for 40 years, just screaming into headsets, micromanaging every single second of the broadcast.
And now it's Triple H.
Now it's Polevesque, Triple H, sitting there as the chief content officer. It's the final stop before a performer goes from being a person, let's say, Joe and A, to becoming this larger-than-life demigod character, Roman Reigns. It's the portal between reality and fiction.
And NFL Films, the same people who make Hard Knocks, they just put high-definition cameras and boom mics right in their faces.
Yeah.
In this sanctuary.
And that production pedigree matters so much.
Hey.
If this was shot by a standard reality TV crew, it would look and feel like an episode of Jersey Shore.
Right. Shaky cams, lots of yelling.
But NFL Films brings this incredibly cinematic aesthetic to it. You get the dramatic slow motion, the swelling orchestral scores, the extreme close-ups on a bead of sweat on a producer's forehead. They treat the entire roster not as athletes or stuntmen, but as these tragic characters in some grand Shakespearean drama.
Which totally elevates the material. It signals to the viewer, pay attention. This is important.
Exactly. And that very elevation of style, that seriousness, is crucial because it leads directly to that quote you mentioned, the one from the showrunner, Eric Powers.
This quote it absolutely blew my mind. He told Awful Announcing announcing that watching the creative team book a storyline, And we're talking about them just sitting in a boardroom deciding who beats whom was like, and this is a direct quote, seeing the Constitution being written.
It just sounds so hyperbolic, almost arrogant, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Your first reaction is, like, come on, guys. You're writing a soap opera about men in spandex throwing each other around. You aren't founding a democracy here.
That was my exact first reaction. It felt incredibly self-important.
But if you strip away the snark for a second, and you really think about the WWE Universe, as they call it, for the millions and millions of people who follow this religiously, the canon of storylines, the Undertaker's streak ending, the whole Bloodline saga, the Montreal Screwjob, these events are their founding documents.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
These are the cultural touchstones that define their community. They're the moments they'll talk about for the next 30 years.
So for that specific fan base, the lore is genuinely sacred.
Precisely. So Powers is making the argument that witnessing the moment those ideas go from just a random thought in Triple H's head to a note on a piece of paper is, for pop culture, historically significant. He's saying that for this specific tribe of people, that booking sheet is their constitution.
And the show gives us this concrete, almost startling example of this exact process in season 2. The whole thing with the Seth Rollins fake injury from back in July 2025.
Right. This is the case study that really anchors the entire season. It's the perfect encapsulation of what this show is trying to be.
So let's break this down piece by piece. In July of 2025, Seth Rollins, who is one of their absolute top stars, appears to just blow out his knee on live television.
And it looks bad.
It looks awful. Twitter or X, whatever, it just melts down. It looks completely legitimate. He's screaming in pain. Doctors are running out from the back. The referee throws up the X sign with his arms, which is the universal signal for a real unscripted injury.
And you have to add the context that Rollins has a history of very serious legitimate knee injuries. So the audience has that trauma, that memory already stored in their heads. When they see him go down clutching his knee, they believe it instantly. There's no skepticism.
It was all a work.
We need to define that term early and clearly. In the language of wrestling, a work is anything that is scripted, planned, or fake. A shoot, on the other hand, is anything real, unscripted, or legitimate.
Okay, so the injury was a work. The whole thing is scripted from the beginning to set up his big surprise return at SummerSlam a month later. It's a classic wrestling trope.
It is, a very effective one. But here's where WWE Unreal completely changes the game. See, normally, a documentary would interview Seth 6 months later. He'd be sitting in a nice chair, looking healthy, and he'd say, yeah, you know, we really tricked him. It was great.
But Unreal didn't do that.
Not even close. Unreal showed us the room where the lie was born. Eric Powers, the showrunner, describes being in the writer's room when Triple H just leans back in his big executive chair and says, well, what if we, and then proceeds to pitch the entire fake injury angle.
The actual inception of the lie, on camera.
And the detail that gave me chills, the thing that makes it feel so real, was the secrecy. Triple H looks across the table, points to one of the writers, and says explicitly, don't write it down in the notes.
Don't write it down. That feels like a line straight out of a mob movie or like a political thriller, like you're in the Situation Room.
It totally does. And just think about the layers there. You have a documentary film crew filming the chief content officer of a multi-billion-dollar company telling his staff to create a conspiracy while simultaneously instructing them to leave no paper trail, also they can deceive a live television audience of millions.
And now we, the Netflix audience, are sitting at home watching the deception being planned.
It's a work inside a shoot, inside another work. It's completely dizzying. And what it does brilliantly is it validates the smart fan.
Okay, explain the smart fan for us.
The smart fan, or SMARC, is the fan who knows it's all fake, but obsesses over the backstage politics and the business side of it. They don't really care who wins the match. They care why the writers decided that particular person should win.
So they're not watching the show, they're watching the metagame behind the show.
Correct. For decades, WWE fought tooth and nail against those fans. They tried to protect the illusion at all costs. They hated the internet dirt sheets that would spoil storylines.
Right.
Now, with Unreal, they are completely monetizing that obsession. They're leaning into it. They're basically saying, you want to know how the sausage is made? Fine. But we're going to make the sausage-making process look just as dramatic and entertaining as the sausage eating.
And this is where we get to the big controversy, and this is where that documentary label really starts to peel off at the corners a little bit.
Right.
Because if the entertainment value now comes from watching the construction of the show, then the construction itself has to become a performance. And performances, by definition, can be faked.
And that's the paradox.
Yeah.
If the writer's room is the new wrestling ring, are the writers now working from a script? Are they performing the role of stressed writer for the benefit of the Netflix cameras?
Well, we have a report here from Ringside News, and it's citing Billy Body from the Dirty Sheets Wrestling Informer. Now look, we know Billy is a provocateur. His job is to stir the pot.
He's known for that, yeah.
But the accusation he's making is very specific. He claims that while the general premise is real, yes, they are filming backstage-specific booking meetings that we see in Season 2 were staged explicitly for the documentary.
So basically reenactments.
Essentially, yes. Or maybe more like performative debates. The smoking gun, according to these critics, is the scene where they debate the finish of the WrestleMania Night 1 triple threat match. That's the one involving Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk.
Well, I remember this scene so vividly. The writers are all sitting around this big table. They've got their heads in their hands. They look exhausted. They're stressing out.
Yeah.
And the dialogue is all, who should win? What's the right call? Should it be Roman? Should it be Seth? What about Punk? It's presented as this incredibly high-stakes, dramatic deadlock where nobody knows the right answer and the clock is just ticking down.
And it makes for great television. It really builds the tension. As a viewer, you feel their anxiety.
But Body and other insiders argue that the decision to have Seth Rollins win that match was locked in weeks, maybe even months, before that meeting was ever filmed.
No way.
They argue the outcome was completely predetermined in order to set up a brand new faction for Seth Rollins with Paul Heyman later in the year.
So the destination was already programmed into the GPS. They were just acting out the part where they argue about which route to take.
That's the claim, that the debate was completely moot. They sat there and pretended to agonize over an outcome that was already printed on a spreadsheet in someone's office.
If that is true, that feels, I don't know, manipulative, or is that just, show business?
It's the absolute definition of reality TV. In the industry, they actually call these pickups. Let's say you and I have a really great, spontaneous argument about coffee, but the microphones weren't on or the cameras weren't rolling.
Yeah.
The producer comes in after and says, hey, that was fantastic television. Can you guys please have that argument again, but this time can you start with the phrase, I really hate espresso?
So we're basically acting out a real conversation we already had.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is the scene fake? Well, technically, yes. But is the content of the scene fake? Did we actually disagree about coffee? Yes, we did. It's a very blurry line.
But for the wrestling fan specifically, does that distinction even matter? I mean, if I'm watching Drive to Survive, I just assume half those driver meetings are set up for the camera. Why is it different for wrestling?
Because the modern wrestling fan prides themselves on being an insider now.
Yeah.
They view themselves as detectives, trying to piece together the truth. So if you're selling them a show that promises the truth behind the fake sport, and then that truth turns out to be fake too,
You risk alienating the exact audience you're trying to court.
you do. It's a breach of the new contract you've made with them. The contract is, we'll show you behind the curtain, not we'll build a fake curtain behind the real curtain.
However, we have to look at the other side of this. The director, Chris Weaver, tells a very different story. Fightful did a great deep dive interview with him. And Weaver, he isn't a wrestling guy, right? That's not his background.
No, and that's his superpower in this whole thing.
Hey.
He came from the world of NFL films. He approached this project like it was a workplace drama, not some kind of fan tribute. And he claims they shot over 900 hours of footage.
900 hours, that is an insane amount of data. You simply cannot script 900 hours of content.
You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And his core argument is that you cannot fake the genuine chaos of live television. He points specifically to the moments filmed in the gorilla position.
Right.
For example, Seth Rollins' Money in the Bank cash-in. That's happening on a live broadcast. Millions of people are watching. The timing has to be second perfect. You cannot stage the authentic sweat on a producer's forehead when the signal goes live and something almost goes wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. Stress is incredibly hard to act, especially for non-actors like writers and TV producers.
Precisely. And Weaver also made the point that because WWE shoots everything constantly anyway, for social media, for YouTube, for their own network, the talent, the wrestlers themselves, often didn't even realize the Netflix cameras were special. They just became part of the furniture.
The fly on the wall theory. If cameras are always there, you eventually stop acting for them and just go about your business.
Eventually, yes, you become numb to them. And there were absolutely moments where the documentary crew was just as worked, just as fooled as the fans at home. The John Cena heel turn in season 1, for instance.
Oh, the moment that everyone had been waiting 10 years for. The ultimate good guy finally turns bad.
The production crew on Unreal admitted they had no idea what was happening. The circle of trust on that decision was so incredibly tight that the camera operators were genuinely reacting in real time, just like the fans in the arena.
Wow.
And that suggests that while some of the, more administrative meetings might be soft-scripted or reshot as pickups, the big, emotional, story-defining beats are capturing genuine shock and awe.
It brings up this term that we see in our notes constantly, work shoot. It really seems like the most important vocabulary word for understanding media in 2026.
It is the most important concept in modern media, period, not just in wrestling. A work is fake. A shoot is real. A work shoot is a deliberate blend of the two that is designed to confuse you. It's when a wrestler goes off script. But the off-script moment was actually approved by the boss beforehand.
Or when a reality star gets drunk and starts a huge fight on camera. Is the fight real, or did the producer hand them a bottle of tequila and say, go make some good TV?
It's basically gaslighting as an entertainment strategy.
That's a great way to put it.
And WWE Unreal is the ultimate work shoot. It blurs that line so effectively that even the people inside the industry, the so-called experts, are sitting around arguing about what was real and what was staged.
Which segues perfectly into the bigger historical argument, because as I was reading through the analysis from Pro Wrestling Stories and that really fascinating Reddit thread, I had this realization. We tend to treat reality TV and pro wrestling as two completely different genres.
We do.
But the argument being made here is that wrestling actually invented reality TV.
It's an incredibly compelling thesis, and I think it's true. Just think about the core definition of kayfabe.
Right, pretending the fight is real, protecting the illusion.
Kayfabe didn't die in the 90s when wrestling finally admitted it was scripted entertainment. It didn't die at all. It just migrated. It moved to the Bravo network. It moved to the E network. It moved to Hulu and Netflix.
So Vanderpump Rules is just wrestling without the suplexes?
100%. Think about the mechanics of it. You take real people, you put them in a produced, somewhat artificial environment, a bar, a mansion, a wrestling arena. You find their real-life conflicts, you exaggerate them for dramatic effect, and then you edit it all together to create a narrative with heroes and villains. That is exactly what territory wrestling was doing in the 1970s.
So while PBS was airing An American Family back in 1973, which is often cited as the first reality show, wrestling promoters were already masters of this.
They were miles ahead. An American Family was revolutionary because it just followed the Loud family. It was shocking because cameras were just watching people live their lives. But wrestling was already taking real-life beefs between performers and actively monetizing them.
The emotional economy, as they call it.
That's the term. Look at the specific examples the sources highlight because they're amazing. Mick Foley in 1995. This is years before Survivor, years before Big Brother.
The famous Kane Dewey promo.
It's a legendary and kind of dark moment. Mick Foley was a wrestler in ECW, which was this super gritty, violent counterculture promotion based in Philadelphia. And the fans who loved violence turned on him because they thought he wasn't being violent enough for their tastes.
Okay.
So they held up this horrible sign in the front row of a show that said Kane Dewey.
And Dewey was his son.
His 3-year-old son.
That is just, that's sick.
It's absolutely horrible. But instead of ignoring it or getting angry privately, Foley went on TV and cut a monologue where he's screaming about that sign. He used his real, genuine anger as a father, his wife's real tears when she saw the sign, to fuel his character's motivation. He took his real life, amplified it, and sold it right back to the audience that heard him.
And that is the exact blueprint for every single Real Housewives reunion special that has ever aired.
It's the exact same DNA. You take the real trauma and you package it for mass consumption.
And then it gets even more intense with the Matt Hardy, Edge, and Lita situation in 2005.
The absolute gold standard of monetized heartbreak.
For those who don't know the history, it's a messy one.
It's incredibly messy. The short version is Lita cheated on her real-life boyfriend, Matt Hardy, with his real-life best friend, Edge. All three were wrestlers in WWE. It was public. It was ugly. Matt Hardy got fired for airing it all online because he was being unprofessional.
But the internet buzz around it was so huge, the fan support for Matt was so overwhelming, that WWE had no choice but to hire him back.
And what was the very first thing they did?
They put them in a feud on TV?
They made Matt Hardy fight Edge. They made Lita stand there at ringside and watch her ex-boyfriend and her new boyfriend beat each other up. Lita later said in an interview, very bluntly, there was money involved.
That is just so cold. Oh, your heart is broken and your life is in shambles? Great. We think that'll do a 3.0 rating on Monday night.
It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that reality is the most potent additive you can put into a fictional script. And the Montreal Screwjob in 1997 was the nuclear explosion that proved it on a corporate level.
Bret Hart and Vince McMahon.
Bret Hart really got screwed out of the championship by his boss, Vince McMahon. He really spat in Vince McMahon's face backstage. And that one moment of pure, unscripted hatred created the Mr. McMahon evil boss character. Vince realized, oh, the fans hate me for real. I can use that. That character fueled the biggest financial boom period in the history of the business.
So Unreal is just the next most transparent evolution of this. But there is this weird irony that was mentioned in that Reddit thread. A user argued that modern reality TV stars actually protect their secrets. They protect kayfabe better than modern wrestlers do now.
It's the kayfabe paradox. It's so true. Wrestlers have spent the last 20 years eagerly telling everyone, hey, it's fake. Look at my podcast. Here's my Instagram showing me hanging out with my supposed enemy. They wanted to get credit for their performance. They wanted to be seen as actors and stuntmen.
Meanwhile, you have the Kardashians and the cast of Vanderpump, and they maintain the illusion 24/7.
They never, ever admit that scenes are staged or that storylines are produced. They work the gimmick on their social media constantly. If two of the housewives are fighting on the show, they're fighting on Twitter that same night. They treat their show as a pure documentary, even though we all know deep down that it's heavily produced.
So the wrestlers who perform a fake sport became the honest actors, and the reality stars who perform their real lives became the kayfabe masters.
In a bizarre way, yes. And that's exactly why Unreal is WWE trying to reclaim the territory they pioneered. They're looking at the reality TV landscape and saying, you guys like this kind of drama. We literally invented this drama. Here's the reality of our reality.
But does exposing the business to this degree ruin the magic? I mean, we have a section here on the human element, and traditionalists, the old heads of the business, they seem to hate this show. They say showing all the strings just ruins the puppet show.
And that's a very valid fear. It's a legitimate concern. If I see that R-Truth and The Miz are actually best friends who play video games together backstage, why should I care when they're supposed to be bitter enemies fighting in the ring? It lowers the emotional stakes of the performance.
But R-Truth himself has a completely different take on it. He was on The Breakfast Club, and his perspective was really, really touching.
R-Truth is a national treasure. The man has been in the business forever, and his arc in Season 2 is without a doubt the emotional anchor of the entire show.
So for those who haven't seen it yet, explain what happened with him.
Well, his contract was expiring. He's in his 50s now, which is ancient for a pro wrestler. And management essentially told him, thank you for your service, but we're moving on. We don't have anything for you. He was effectively being forced into retirement, not by his own choice.
And the fans didn't know this was happening at the time.
Not at first. But when word started to leak out online, the fan backlash was immediate and severe. The fans absolutely love him. And Unreal documents that period of uncertainty so well. It shows a man who has given his entire adult life to this one business suddenly facing the void. It shows the actual meetings where Triple H is unsure if truth still has any value to the company.
And R-Truth argued that showing the sweat, blood, and tears makes the fans respect the performance art of it more.
I think he's absolutely right. It completely shifts the central question for the audience. The question is no longer, is this fight in the ring real? The question becomes, is this person's struggle for their career real? When you see R-Truth literally fighting for his job, not for a fictional championship belt, you root for him on a much deeper human level. It allowed him to, as he said, reinvent himself one more time.
And we saw that with other characters, too. Rhea Ripley showing her real-life nervousness and self-doubt. She plays this eradicator character, this dominant goth nightmare persona.
Right.
But in the documentary, she's Dimitri Bennett, a young woman from Australia who's worried about her spot and whether she's living up to expectation.
And CM Punk? The documentary doesn't shy away from his controversial past, his baggage. It shows the real tension and the hesitation from others backstage about his return. It humanizes him in a way a wrestling promo never could.
And the Cody Rhodes story, I mean, the report from Fightful about what happened at the Elimination Chamber is just wild.
This is the ultimate truth is stranger than fiction moment. The director, Chris Weaver, revealed that Cody Rhodes found out that The Rock was taking his WrestleMania main event spot. the spot he'd worked his entire life for, only 15 minutes before the segment happened on live television.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Can you even imagine that? You have worked your whole life for this one specific moment. You were the top good guy. You won the Royal Rumble. And 15 minutes before you walk out in front of 20,000 people, your boss pulls you aside and says, hey, sorry, the biggest movie star in the world decided he wants your spot. You're out. Now go out there and shake his hand and smile.
And he had to do it. He had to go out and smile through it.
And to walk out, raise The Rock's hand, and walk away like it was his idea. The cameras caught the immediate aftermath backstage. That is a level of professional heartbreak and incredible discipline that you could never, ever script effectively. And it creates a level of empathy for the character of Cody Rhodes that no fictional storyline ever could.
It validates his entire character. His gimmick is the American nightmare, the guy fighting against the system and his father's legacy. Well, turns out he really was fighting the system.
It's perfect synergy. The reality reinforces the fiction. The shoot makes the work 100 times stronger.
Okay, let's pivot for a second to the business side of all this. Because WWE is a publicly traded company, well, it's part of the TKO group now. This isn't just art for art's sake. Newsweek points out that Unreal is, first and foremost, a promotional engine.
It is a very expensive, very well-made commercial for Monday Night Raw. People need to remember, Raw moved to Netflix in January 2025. This entire docuseries is the Drive to Survive playbook executed to perfection.
For those who might not follow Formula One, can you explain the Drive to Survive effect?
Sure. A few years ago, F1 was a very niche, European-centric sport, especially in the US. Then Netflix came in and made a docuseries that basically ignored all the technical stuff, the tire specs, the engine regulations, and focused exclusively on the personalities.
The handsome drivers, the billionaire team principals, the bitter rivalries.
Exactly. They focused on the human drama. And overnight, Formula One exploded in America.
Wow.
You suddenly had people who had never watched a single race in their lives waking up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday to watch Max Verstappen drive in a circle.
Right.
WWE looked at that model and said, wait a minute, we have more drama than F1. We have more characters. And we own all the intellectual property. Let's do that. The director, Chris Weaver, explicitly said he treated WWE like a weekly episodic drama show, not like a sport. He wanted to hook the person who loves Succession or The Office.
It's basically Succession with spandex and body slams.
Ideally, yes. And notice the subtle production choices Weaver made that reinforce that. He mentioned in interviews that he made a point to focus on Dimitri Bennett and Phil Brooks, not Rhea Ripley and CM Punk.
Using their real names.
Focusing on the people, not the masks they wear. That is how you get the casual, non-wrestling viewer to care. You might not care about the Eradicator winning a title, but you might care about a young woman named Dimitri trying to prove herself to her demanding bosses.
So what's the future? Season 3? Is it happening?
Officially, there isn't an announcement yet, but unofficially, oh, it's definitely happening. Cameras have been spotted all over the place, especially in the gorilla position. Weaver himself was seen filming during that Seth Rollins cash-in we talked about earlier. You don't film that kind of crucial footage unless you're making another season.
But there's a catch, isn't there? The money.
Always the money. Several members of the talent revealed to Fightful that they are not paid any extra money for appearing in Unreal.
Wait, hold on. They are the stars of a show that is consistently in the top 10 on Netflix globally, and they get $0 extra for it. That seems incredibly exploitative.
The company line is that they're being paid in exposure. The idea is that the show builds their personal brand, which helps them sell more merchandise, which gets them better booking on the main show, which leads to a bigger contract down the line.
The pay you an exposure argument in 2026, that is incredibly Carnival Barker.
It is classic old-school wrestling business. We are giving you the platform, kid. It's up to you to make the most of it. But to be fair, most of the talent seem to be okay with it for now because they see what Drive to Survive did for the F1 drivers. Daniel Ricciardo became a massive global star because of that show. The WWE roster wants that same crossover fame.
They all want to get that Hollywood deal.
Exactly. So for now, they'll take the free exposure in exchange for the chance to be the next Rock or the next John Cena. It's a gamble.
So, to try and wrap this all up, we have a show that is documenting a fake sport. The emotions behind it are real, but the meetings about those emotions might be staged reenactments of real politics. It really is a hall of mirrors.
It's completely dizzying. But I think it leads us to a much bigger, more fundamental question about how we consume all media now, not just wrestling.
And what's that?
If reality TV is just kayfabe repackaged for non-wrestling fans, and wrestling has now become a documentary about its own writer's room, have we finally reached a point where nothing we see on a screen can be trusted as authentic?
Or maybe. Does it even matter anymore? As long as we're entertained by it.
That is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Yeah.
There was a quote from that Reddit thread that summed it up perfectly for
Yeah.
me. The user said, "It's like a magic show. People know there's no such thing as real magic. It's just sleight of hand and misdirection. But we still pay for the ticket to see the show."
We want to be tricked.
Or maybe we just want to be let in on the trick.
Mm.
Unreal invites us to be part of the conspiracy. It whispers to us, "Come inside the tent. Look at the Constitution being written. Look at us fooling all those other people, the rubes."
And by doing that, we become the biggest rubes of all.
Always.
Well, I am definitely going to go watch Vanderpump Rules with a completely different perspective now. I'm going to be looking for the gorilla position in the back of Lisa Vanderpump's restaurant.
Just remember the cardinal rule. Don't work yourself into a shoot.
That is solid advice. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.